Hey friends, here are 5 tips and tricks to spice up your photography game starting right now with tip number 1. Slow down your shutter speed to create interesting light trails like this. To pull off this effect properly, you're going to want to mount your camera on a tripod, and I'm going to use this ESDDI LED light with a gel covering. And as for our camera settings, I'm going to lower my shutter speed to 2 seconds. What that means is it's going to let in light for 2 seconds, and that gives me time to move my LED through the frame, creating this very cool, very smooth stream of light. I learned that on TikTok. Tip number 2, use something like an iPad to create a reflection of your subject. Make sure your surface is clean using something like a microfiber cloth. And of course, be sure not to leave any scratches. If you don't have an iPad or a screen that big, you can use your phone, depending on the size of the object you want to shoot, of course. Tip number 3, using foreground elements to help frame your shot or make it look more interesting. Because sometimes you can take a picture and it has a lot of negative space. We can use foreground elements to help fill in that space. In this case, I'm going to try out these lighters. Let's see how creative we can get with these. Please don't burn your house down if you decide to do this with lighters. These flares look like legit film burn, and I'm here for it. You can use pretty much any object to create a foreground element. Here's one of my favorites. I like to use leaves to frame my shot because I like those really deep green colors. Tip number 4, let's talk about texture. Now, you don't have to spend a bunch of money online to buy textures for your photography. You can find it right here in your own home. For example, this old bacon tray I've been using for pictures for the last couple of years. I made a whole video about knife photography, and I used this old bacon tray as a background, and it looked pretty cool to me. I also used a guitar amp for texture. I'll leave a link to that video in the description below if you're interested in checking it out. And of course, textures are everywhere. For example, like this table that I'm sitting at. This is the underside of the actual table that I'm supposed to be using. I flipped this table over because I actually preferred how the underside looked. It had way more texture, it was way more rugged, and I just think it looks a lot better for photography. So have a look around your home, you'd be very, very surprised with what kind of textures you might find. Even an old concrete floor can look pretty cool. And finally, number 5, I made a video on this very recently. It's about double exposures. I'm going to link it up here if you're interested in checking it out. A double exposure is essentially 2 images layered on top of each other to create a new and surreal looking image. There's a good chance that your camera has this feature already built into it, especially if you're shooting on Canon. Again, in that video, I explain everything you need to know about double exposures on the Canon system. If you found this video helpful, give it a thumbs up, subscribe if you're not already, and I will see you in another video very soon. Bye. For example, this old... Tip number 2, reflective surfaces. We're going to use this iPad reel without using any Photoshop. Using this ESDD1 DDI on your shutter speed to create interesting light trails like this.